Hey everybody, this is Liz from Augusta, and today I have someone special that I want you to meet, and this is Abraham. And how do you say your last name?
Mascorro. You got
Mascaro.
to roll your R. There you go.
Mascaro. And
Yeah.
he is
Yeah.
from Texas, and he can tell us exactly where he's from in that gigantuous state. And then we'll learn a little bit more about him. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Liz. How about yourself?
Good. So, what part of Texas are you from?
Far West Texas, city of El Paso, Texas.
El Paso, Texas. Is it hot there right now?
It's actually not too bad. I was when we were in conference, it was about the same temperature
Okay.
that we're having here.
Okay. So, about a month
But
ago. Does it ever rain?
it's very seldom. So in our rainy day season is from August to maybe September. So about two,
Mm-hmm.
3 months of rains here and there, and all these weeds grow everywhere, which is a lot of our workload comes from that. Mhm.
Interesting. So right now
Yeah.
you're busy? You're busy?
Right now, February is one of our lowest months,
Okay.
but we are staying busy, specifically with recurring customers that we've kept up with. That's kind of what keeps us busy during the winter.
Fantastic. It's just so interesting to
Mhm.
hear you say winter when we're used to snow and all of that stuff in the winter.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so I asked you here today because you're one of the first franchisees. What number are you? Do you know?
Number four.
Number four. And that is
Yeah,
crazy. You're like the one of the OGs from back in the day. And
that's
how
correct.
long has it been since you joined?
We joined 2019. We were the first class of trainees.
I'm sorry.
Um,
We've come so far.
I've seen some of the new training videos, and it's amazing. You guys are doing fantastic back there. So
Yeah, we
yeah.
get a little better every time. So, for the listener's sake, this is 2023. So, the very first training was us just trying to get our feet under us, and the first 10 had to suffer right along with us.
Hey, it was great back then. I had no
Yeah.
complaints. I was just so excited, and yeah.
So, how did you first hear about Augusta?
I started listening to Mike actually with his business boot camp back in
Mm,
2016. So since 2016, and then he mentioned in one of the episodes that he had a landscaping company, and he had another podcast called Landscape Business Course Podcast. And I started actually going into that podcast because at that same time is when I decided to open up a landscaping business. I went to this transition of I don't know what I wanted to open.
hmm
And so I started learning, service-based businesses versus retail, brick and mortar and stuff. So I found him, and just everything that he offered as far as help, which I couldn't find anywhere else, was to me was just uh, I don't want to say weird, but just it was unheard of. So I was actually one of the first. Also, he had this live webinar,
hmm
and I signed up for it. It was like seven of us in the webinar asking questions, typing, and he was answering everything, and it was great. So that's how I found out about Mike. Mhm.
So, you followed him for a few years before he even started the franchise.
Yeah, absolutely. A good friend of mine also, he listened to him a lot, so we would share stuff that would come out on the podcast on Business Bootcamp, and we'd just talk about it, and it was great. It was cool just to know that Mike. And then when I found out his age at that time, it was just I was my mind was blown.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Mhm.
He's still pretty young. I think he's 27 now.
Right.
Well, just a few years later. So, when you were listening back then, and he talked about landscape business course, had he started the course then?
He actually did, and I bought into it. I forgot how much I paid for it, which was well worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned so much from that course, and it was very specific, very detailed. So I come from nursing, so trying to find something that can help me run a business with systems. It
Yep.
was hard for me, and finding Mike's videos, they were very helpful. All the way from how to hitch a trailer, to how
Wow.
to pick a CRM. That was a business course. Yeah.
So that's really remarkable. So you weren't already in the landscape industry before you came to Augusta?
No, no, I was a nurse for 10 years. I worked in geriatrics and I learned a lot from there. You know, that's where I got my pretty much all my experience with delegating, managing, you know, crews and of course adapting to situations. And I do have to say that was great. But towards the last maybe 3, 4 years, my heart started changing towards trying to build a culture, trying to because I would see, you know, nurses and you know other colleagues, you know, work themselves to death with no meaning and no support from corporate. So I kind of was looking for a way that I can create something where I can build something that I can actually help people that are working with me. So
Yes.
when I started listening to Mike and his ideas about team culture, at the time I was also, you know, reading a lot of books um, from, you know, all these great authors, and you know, it all kind of came all together, and that's when I pretty much went into the to landscaping since I had a little bit of experience before that I obtained from my father, and that's kind of how I ended up here. Being that there was really no entry uh, of a big budget needed. It's just basically service based. You just need time and a couple tools, and that's kind of how I got started.
Going back to your experience at the hospital, did you feel kind of
Mhm.
paralyzed or powerless to change any of the culture that was there?
Yes, that was my biggest issue. I always found ways I always thought of ways to do things faster, but I could never get them through to people or my bosses.
Yes.
So then when I forgot what podcast I was listening to, that when I think it was Tim Ferriss, and he was interviewing somebody and saying that like kind of if you have that feeling of your when you're at work, a lot of these entrepreneurs kind of have that, and so that kind of sparked something in me saying maybe I need to own my own thing, and so that's kind
Hmm.
of how I started going into trying to figure out what I wanted to do now to make a bigger impact.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mhm.
Do you remember when Mike said that that was one of the reasons he left the medical field? It was because there was so much bureaucracy, bureaucracy, and so much insurance paperwork and so many things like that that they had to deal with all day long that he felt like he could do a better job at making an impact on the world in business and then make the money to then help people that were sick and were in the hospital.
Yes, I remember. I could actually tell you the day that he said that because it gave me chills just to because that's kind of how when I went to the conference, his first conference, 2019, it was actually Summit 2019.
Hmm.
I attended, and by this time it was before he even franchised. I attended just to because by that time I had been working in my own landscaping company for a year part time. I was still a nurse,
Okay.
so I went to this conference, and then he mentioned that there. And as soon as he said that, I was just like, wow, I felt very connected with Mike and his vision that he had.
And just to jump ahead a little bit, something that I wouldn't typically get to ask anyone, but as you look back on your experience in the at the hospital, now learning and understanding P for P more, have you wondered how, in any way, shape, or form, that we could implement something like that in the hospital?
Oh my goodness, it's something that my wife and I talk about almost on a daily basis because she still works. She picks up shifts here and there at the hospital, and the issues that they have, and it just blows my mind how our guys are we're pushing lawnmowers. They're saving
Yes,
lives, and there's a big disconnect. And to me, it doesn't make sense. So this P for P should actually be implemented in that setting, you know, and we should
100%.
be learning from that because it's people's lives, you know. So yeah.
Yes. Yes, I remember specifically there was a patient that had Parkinson's. And you know how when RNs and the whole team, somebody brings food and there's a potluck and they all go out and they have their food and then they would come back and care for the patients. Well, I remember you could smell the salt and the tortilla chips that they had just had. You can smell it on them. and there was patients that were in PO, they couldn't have a single thing to
Yeah.
eat, and just the
Mhm.
craving of it. And then I would see them walk back out and do that again. And I'm thinking, you have minutes, you have time to actually look deeper into their issues and help this patient a little more if you would just read back in the history just a little bit. And I always thought if they were paid somehow for that extra performance or that extra work, they would have made sure that they were completely, there was no smell about them. They would actually so care about the patient somehow to make a bigger difference that it would matter. But I still have no idea how to implement P for P in that setting.
Trust me, Liz, I've thought about that so many times. And what you're saying specifically, it would always break my heart. It's just so crazy how there's some people that don't understand. Because to me, it's common sense and
For
just
sure.
just being nice, being a human being, and I always told my people, just pretend it's your mother when you walk into
Yes.
the room. And
Hmm.
to me, that was the best way to describe it. It was just like cut straight to the point. Pretend it's your mother that you're taking care of, and that pretty much describes it all.
Hmm. So all that care and all that management experience you're now pouring into your employees, is that what you've sought to do?
Yes, I honestly, there's a lot of things that I do like to take on my own, and it's hard to let go. I think it's more like human nature, kind of.
Hmm.
But it hasn't been that hard, to delegate as far as least for me.
Yep.
Um, but being that it's a whole different cake,
Yeah.
um, it's just there's other things that now, 3 years in, this is our fourth year. Um, I can honestly, I feel very confident on the stuff that I'm weak, my weaknesses, my strengths, and what I have to work with, and all that stuff. So,
Hmm.
yeah.
What was the
Mhm.
final little clincher that made you know that you should join Augusta and the franchise?
Right. The final thing was going to the conference in 2019 before Mike franchised, and coming back to apply a lot of the things that I learned 2019 into my, at that time, part-time landscaping company. So I actually went full-time right after conference, after summit, excuse me. I went full-time into landscaping, of course, with the blessing of my wife,
Yes.
and which matters a lot to me. So after that, I tried implementing a lot of the systems, that were spoken of in 2019, and realized that it was very hard and very difficult. And I don't understand how a lot of people do it. And my main thing is like, I have this, I call it an onion, where it's weird, but it's an onion where I have to take care of myself first, and then it's my wife, and then it's my kids, and then it just kind of starts separated, and then it's my mom, my sisters, and then it
Hmm.
gets bigger. Next is my community, my
Yep.
neighborhood, my neighbors, my community, and it just kind of expands. And it can't be the other way. So
Yes.
just thinking about that, and not letting this business at that time consume me. I
Hmm.
couldn't find that right thing, because my our son was already born at that time. So I did not want to focus a lot on the business and then just leave him hanging. So it was just a weird
Hmm.
transition. So then, if you fast forward 2019, I believe it was like around July, Mike mentioned franchising, and I was just curious, and I decided to really inquire about it, and here we are.
Wow, that's so exciting. There's so much to go in that could go into that. Did you have a lot of fear about being able to make the same amount of money that you had made at the hospital? Was that part of the stressor on you?
Before that summit in 2019, it was. But when I went to summit 2019, and I saw it was 50 of us in the room, from all over the country. I got to meet so many different people and how much money they were making. I wasn't taking into account as far as what they were spending it in, or what they were, it was just how much their revenue, how much their companies were making. And
Hmm.
so then that opened my eyes to know, hey, there is money to be made. It's just a matter of how can I systematize this, and just and grow it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I was never I was never afraid after that,
Okay.
of not making the same amount of money.
Mm-hmm. So how has your experience with Augusta been so far?
My experience has been great. I honestly, I'm not one to complain. I have no regrets. More than anything, it's actually been helpful for myself. I've been able to grow as a person, and with all your, I know you put a lot of lists of books and podcasts, and that's helped tremendously with self growth, which is something that back as a nurse was never offered. It was just we had to kind of look for it on our own, and that's how I found Mike, by the way. But just having the support group that the franchise comes with, whether it's you, Mike, other franchisees, that everybody's just willing to just take a couple minutes to talk to you. Um, to me, that's the most important part of this thing, because it's not easy.
No.
It's not at all by any means. So
Yes.
having that support team, it's this has been a great journey, and something that I'm just eager to just continue.
That was my next question was, have you found like personally, spiritually, your relationships and you as a person, have you experienced growth because you've come to the franchise and because of its influence?
Absolutely. It's been one of those things where I know that we're all a team, and I cannot fail my team. So by that, I consume a lot of content. I try always, to be the better person, to do the things right, even when nobody's looking. Like our core values that
Yes.
we share. Um, so that's how I see it, and it's just so conducive to that. And it's nothing to me. It's not difficult to do that, and because of that same mentality, it's weird how you kind of start going to another, like drifting away from old friendships, old friends, and stuff like that. So which it's there's to me it's better. It's sometimes it has to
hmm
happen. So yeah.
So when you're communicating with the franchisees, do you have a WhatsApp group for all the Texans?
Yes, we're in a Texas WhatsApp group. And
That's
it's weird
hilarious.
because all of Texas shares different weathers, so there's a little bit of every you find a little bit of everything in the big state.
Yeah. So when you have that group, what do you mainly talk about? Do you ask the same kind of questions that we would on as a whole on Facebook about your estimates, your jobs, your team? Is that the kind of stuff you share, or do you share deeper, like family and what you're going through, or is it very surface?
Right now, it's we're sharing struggles. Anybody has a question, but it's weather. How we're doing, especially around in slow season. What kind of work everybody is getting. What we can do to kind of boost our leads and stuff like that. Mhm.
So having the Facebook and the support of people that can just ask anything whenever, however, do you feel really supported in that way, as opposed to if you were all by yourself and was just trying to figure out things like, say, 3, 4 years ago? Do you think you would have come this far without a whole nation of people backing you up like this?
Not at all. One of the things that I also share with my wife is that the people that I use that I know still, and that own businesses, that I would ask for business advice. I realize how wrong that advice was, and they've been
Mm,
running businesses for years, and I took it, because they knew I was kind of okay. Well, I'm going to do it like that, and it was just completely wrong information, and even small things, because you realize how important every single minute of your day is,
yes.
that you cannot malspend it. So even things like that, it was just wrong information. So now with Augusta Nation, all the franchisees, you guys, we kind of I feel that I'm not weird, that I'm actually it's normal. I don't feel like that I'm left out. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, because I
hmm
see business people that I know in my community that are good in a certain way, And now I feel like no, like this is actually good because I see Nick Reed doing it, Thomas, Kevin,
Yes.
all the rest of the franchisees, we're all going through everybody has different level sizes of businesses, but
Mm-hmm.
the struggles are, pretty much the same in stages of growth. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How much have you grown in the time? So you've been actually with the franchise for 3 years, right? From the
hmm
beginning. So how much has your company grown in that amount of time, and how many employees do you have?
So in the off season, we only keep two employees and myself. I'm still very involved in the field, but we've went from having zero customers because my old landscaping company we did mainly installs, so I had pretty much maybe like two customers of recurring work. We went from that to now having about 60 recurring customers. There were some issues that I had in the beginning where I was still trying to do installs and with Augusta.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but realizing now in the wintertime, you cannot go without your recurring
Yes,
customers.
your bread and butter.
It just makes you sane.
Yes.
But that's one of the things that we're focused on this year, as a matter of fact, trying to grow that that mark higher, our recurring number of customers.
Mm-hmm.
And in the heavy season, we do have four employees that and of course me myself on the field. Mhm.
Okay. And what is your goal for this coming year? And then your big, audacious goal?
Big hairy audacious goal. Yeah.
Your BHAG.
This year, right? Yeah. So this year, like I said, we want to focus on growing the recurring um, uh, number of customers and close ratio. We're pretty much laser focused on sales. Uh, that was one of my pitfalls last year. So the big hairy audacious goal would be just growing this business to the level that because we have my wife and I, we have a son, and we actually have plans, to own some property. Maybe we even big enough to even have our shop there.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much, I want the business to take care of all household expenses and more. If I can get it to that level, and where it's covering, everything, and we buy property, and it's still making a profit, then I'm happy with that. And from that point on, we can make another move, either even open up another location,
Mm-hmm.
or we'll see how that goes. But for right now, it's pretty much grow this location um, to the point where it's making a good profit, and we have a good culture, which is very important to me. That we have guys that you know want to come to work, they want to learn, that we can work on their dreams. And there's this book, The Dream Manager.
And I was just going to mention that if you had read
Yeah.
that.
hmm So that's something that we do take very serious. As a matter of fact, one of our guys, he's going through the 3F program. So
Nice.
he's already spoken to Lee. I believe he has another call coming up. So that might be an El Paso second location on the far west side. So yeah, and that's something that I talk to him. I talk to everybody else, the guys that come work for us. That we really push everybody to just grow to their fullest potential. And it takes hard work. Yeah.
What did they think when you introduced P4P to them?
Everybody was on board. I didn't have to struggle.
Wow.
I laid it off pretty clear. I set up some examples, and there was no downfalls, and everybody took it pretty well, and nobody had no complaints. Some questions as the payrolls came through,
Right?
um, but they were all answered, and everybody was okay with it. And
Hmm.
I had no struggle with that.
That's fantastic. So you
Yeah, and it's
mentioned
great.
that's
Yeah.
really good. I mean, some people have maybe it's the way that you described it to them and laid it out and that you gave them examples. I have heard that from others too, that they've loved it from day one. And then others, their employees just struggle with it, probably because they're not working fast enough or getting enough done. And so they hate the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. Thankfully, the time that I implemented, there was some bad apples that we had, but P4P was able to we were able to just replace him really fast.
Yeah, that's awesome. It weeds them out for sure, the low performers.
Definitely. Yeah.
So you mentioned your wife, and I have seen such a bond between the two of you. And from the very first time I met you, she has been, it's not been like, here you are, and it's very fragmented in her support. It's like very united with the two of you. And knowing that you were both in the medical field, you guys made the choice for you to come to Augusta. And can you speak to that in your relationship, making a decision like that, and she's still at the hospital and you're doing this, the struggles that the two of you had in coming to this decision together and her support for you, or was she always supportive?
My wife, thankfully, has always been supportive. My big thing that about myself is I pretty much laid out the dream that I had, and I described it to her, and I showed her what could happen if we don't do something this big, and what can happen if we do.
Hmm.
And so then it was like, what are we gonna do? At that time, she actually, we signed up for Dave Ramsey's financial,
Hmm.
I forgot the course, financial
Yes.
something. Well, we signed up for it and we attended all the classes. And so then at that moment, I knew that there was a big change in her, that we wanted something more than what we had.
Hmm.
And so to me, there's always a salary cap in nursing. Even if you go higher in your career, there's always going to be a salary cap. And finding a business that doesn't have a cap,
Hmm.
the cap is yourself, was something that the way I described it to her, she started buying in. And as I started going with my old landscape business, going to conference, describing to her how the summit in 2019 was, what I learned, she was all in right from the beginning. Very supportive. It's hard, Liz. It's not easy. We do have a 6-year-old that he never we never put him in daycare. My wife has 2 jobs still, because all the money from the business, it's going back to the business. So
Right.
we don't touch it, right? So it is hard because sometimes, knowing my pitfalls of 20 of last year,
Hmm.
and then seeing her work and just things that you have to learn and you have to go through as a business owner,
Yes.
it feels horrible. It feels horrible because it's like you're in a learning process, but then I have my support, that she's struggling so much and just working and working,
Yes.
and then to know that we could have done things better. So there's mixed emotions,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
one thing that I did, and me and her got clear this conference, 2023, was that these mistakes, they have to happen.
Right.
They have to. There's no growth without them.
Right.
So that's our main thing, and having the ladies, the spouse, what was it, the talks that we had
Yeah, like the
during
breakout
conference.
session, the support.
Yes, that was fantastic. That couldn't be more grateful for you guys to come up with something like that, because having the ladies speak up there and having my wife next to me was just amazing. And it's just so yeah, in short, she's very supportive. She uh yeah, I mean, that's we're I consider myself very lucky to have
Hmm.
her, and all the stuff that I learned from her, and yeah.
I know that Mike said at this conference that the men who bring their wives have the most successful businesses. Just that's just what we've seen all across the board.
It makes sense, it really does. I
Yeah,
can see
for
it.
sure. For sure.
Yeah.
And she can see you reflected in the stuff she's hearing from Mike too. And I'm so happy she was there. She was there last year too.
Yeah, she was. Well, yeah, she was there last year. Our son was there too.
Yes, I remember
um
him.
Yeah, so she was there last year, and I mean, even with when we had our virtual conference 2021, I believe, um, she was listening to it also. So she's always been there in the background. That's what I tell my
Yes.
guys too when we're at the shop, when I'm giving meetings. I tell her, hey, you know what? There's a lot of things that happen in the background. You guys are the front line. There's
Mm-hmm.
so many things that happen behind the curtain that you guys are for to have this thing going. You know, so you guys are the face of the company. You got to represent it well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
That's fantastic. So if you had to do it all over again, join Augusta, what would you have done differently?
Um, that's that reminds me of one of the questions that Tim Ferriss asks a lot of his guests is, "What would you tell your 20-year-old self?" You know, like
Hmm.
kind of like. And to me, there's nothing I would tell my 20-year-old self, and there's really nothing I would do different. I am a strong believer that you have to go through your process to get to where you want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how growth is going to happen. If I want to be kinder to myself, then I would tell myself, and I would do over just focusing on sales and closing ratio. That's to be above 60% the first two years, and I think that would have solved so many problems. But
Mm-hmm.
like I said, I can't go back in time, so I,
Right.
I really don't believe in that. Thinking like that, and even me as a person, if I was to go back and tell my 20-year-old self, I wouldn't tell him. I'd just give him a high five, and just keep
Yeah.
going.
Good job.
Yeah.
So, to conclude, I would love to have you share maybe some of your favorite books, podcasts, and then I'm sure you have thousands, but maybe one of your favorite quotes.
Yes. So my favorite podcast of all time would have to be Tim Ferriss. I started listening to that early on, and that's how I started getting the entrepreneurial itch. And also from there, I went on to the Mike Business Bootcamp. As far as books, my I don't have a favorite book because there's just so many of them that I consider
Exactly.
that I regard almost as sacred.
Mm-hmm.
But some of those include Never Finished by David Goggins,
Mm-hmm.
which is his newest one.
Mm-hmm.
Extreme Ownership by Jocko. And now a new one that you introduced actually was Discipline is Destiny
Yeah, that's good, isn't it?
by Ryan Holiday. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. Oh, everybody should read it. That book,
Yes.
it's a must. It really is. Um, and then as far as quotes, I don't know the author of this quote, but it always gets stuck with me, and I always come back to it, like just time after time again. And it pretty much says marriage is hard, divorce is hard, pick your hard. Obesity is hard, being fit is hard, choose your hard. Being in debt is hard, being financially disciplined is hard, choose your hard. So life's always going to be hard. You just have to choose your hard.
Mm, that is so good. That's really good.
Yeah,
Well,
that's
that's a wonderful note to end on. And if you could say thank you to your wife for her amazing support, I would appreciate it. And I'm so grateful for your time today and also your time that you've given us in Augusta and your patience with us in the beginning as we were learning and building the systems.
no worries, Liz. I have full confidence of where we're going. So I'm I'm thankful to have you guys, and of course I'll relate that message to my wife, which she's probably, listening through the door.
She's spying.
Yes, and she's gonna, hear the full thing. So no, I want to just thank you guys for everything that you're doing, and it's fantastic. It's just something so beautiful, so special that I hold really dear to my heart, and I feel so grateful to be a part of.
Yes, me too. So thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Liz. You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.